At long last, after nearly a decade, the official film adaptation for Five Nights at Freddy's released, both in theaters and on the streaming service Peacock. This movie has been in production for, like I said, almost a decade. Over the years, the movie has built up a lot of hype surrounding it, whether it be from FNAF fans, horror movie fans, or whoever. From children to teenagers to adults, a lot of people were excited for this movie. There are of course the people who didn't have hope in it and thought it'd be a disappointment, whether that be because of the red eyes from the first teaser for the film, or the somewhat cheesy production quality a lot of people claimed it had. However, regardless, the film was finally released and I went and saw it with some friends. I was so excited to see Freddy Fazbear in the game on the big screen after so long. It was the time to be a FNAF fan. After all this though, what did I think of the movie? Well, you gotta find out. This will be an analytical review of the film as well as a history of the movie's production and how it came to be. This is going to be in the perspective of someone who's been a fan of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise since the first game's release in 2014 and has been cautiously excited for the film ever since its initial announcement. Before I begin, be sure to subscribe down below and turn on the notification bell. As well, be sure to become a channel member. All totally optional, but it'd be appreciated if you did. Without further ado, let's dive straight into this beast. In April of 2015, it was first announced by Warner Bros. Productions that a Five Nights at Freddy's film was in production. This got fans excited and already theorizing. 3 months later, in July, Gil Kenan signed on to be the film's director. Kenan is most known for being a director of the 2006 film Monster House. Over the time, there have been images shown of what this FNAF movie would have looked like, showing more realistic versions of the animatronics. However, due to multiple factors like presumably the animatronics not working enough for the set, it led to Warner Bros. Putting the movie on turnaround, which ultimately led to this version of the film's cancellation. Scott didn't give up on the movie though, because in March of 2017, Blumhouse Productions was announced to be the replacement production company for the film. It was announced via Scott Cawthon's Twitter account. Yep, not Reddit. Scott posted for the first and as of writing this script only time on Twitter. He tweeted an image of a chair that said Freddy on it with Blumhouse's logo on a screen in the background. Not too long after, in May, Jason Blum, the founder of Blumhouse Productions, stated how he was excited to work on the film and to work closely with Cawthon. A month later in June, it was announced that Kenan was no longer the director of the film. It was unknown for a good bit who the director of the film was going to be. However, in February of 2018, the replacement for the director would be found, and it would be Chris Columbus. Later in August, Scott would reveal that the first draft of the movie's script was being completed with Jason Blum during the same month, announcing a 2020 release. Scott even hinted towards possible sequels to the movie if the movie does well. However, later in November, it turned out Scott scrapped the script he was working on for the film, despite being liked by Columbus and Blum. Scott wanted what was best for his franchise's film. Jump to June 2020, and Jason Blum had an interview with Fandom where he was asked about the progress of the film, and he said, "It's super active, so I really feel like we have a very good shot at seeing a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I feel like it's really moving forward. It's not stalled or anything else. It's moving forward rapidly. I don't want to put a timeline on it, but soon we'll get a movie. I really feel confident about that." Then in November, Scott revealed on Reddit, the FNAF subreddit, that there have been multiple screenplays for the film over the years, but they finally settled on one, which was the Mike screenplay. It presumably combined aspects of all the previous screenplays together into an enjoyable experience, and this would end up being the screenplay used for the final film. Some of the other screenplays included the following. The F screenplay, which consisted of a group of teenagers breaking into a Freddy's location. The story would apparently get weirder as it went on, and the ending was the teenagers discovering an underground animatronic factory that was designing robots for the government. It was thrown now because of how much is strayed from the source material. There's Plushies Take Manhattan, which seems to be a joke screenplay on Scott's part because of how the setup and problem was both Plushies Take Manhattan and the verdict was burned it with fire. There was the random Charlie screenplay, which involved Charlie and her friends sneaking to a Freddy's location after hours to get back a lost toy. Despite the characters being both game and book characters, their characters in film weren't true enough to who they originally were in the games and books. It was only loosely based off of the source material, which led to the tossing of it. Scott even said it was a mix of random FNAF elements altogether with no actual stakes. There was the Silver Eyes screenplay, which was basically a story based off of the Silver Eyes novel. However, Kira Breed Risley, the novel's other author, was an experience of writing for a film and screenplay, so it was eventually tossed, with Scott favoring screenplays about the games more than than the books. There was the Pawn Shop screenplay, where an animatronic is brought into a pawn shop to watch by a kid. Freddy's was apparently robbed and the animatronics were sent to other places for sale, and these animatronics would try to take the one at the pawn shop, leading to an adventure-type movie with the kid and his friends. There was not enough horror, so Scott tossed it. There was also the Cassidy screenplay, which was going to focus on the story behind Cassidy, but the film ended up more like a visual encyclopedia than a movie, and a lot of the people that would have watched it would have been just lost on it. There was the Misfit Kids screenplay, where a single mother and her kid move to a new town where Freddy's is, and the kid finds the Freddy's, and boom. It was tossed because the reason for the protagonist going to Freddy's and everything felt too forced and contrived. Scott concluded that since he didn't care about the characters himself, then nobody else would. This was going to be the screenplay used for a while because of the lack of serious flaws it had in comparison to other screenplays, but it was still tossed for not being good enough. There was the Ghost Tracker screenplay, which involved amateur ghost trackers sneaking into an abandoned Freddy's location. It was tossed because of the lack of connection to Freddy's. It focused more on the ghost trackers if anything, resulting in Scott opting for a better connection with the protagonist and Freddy's for future screenplays. And finally, there was going to be another ghost tracker type of screenplay called the Insane screenplay, but it had the Funtime animatronics, underground pulpit tunnels, and a marionette that was out for revenge. It was tossed because of how over the place it really was. In September 2021, it was announced that Columbus was no longer involved with the production of the film and stepped down as director. In August 2022, it was announced that Jim Henson's Creature Shop would be working on the animatronics for the movie. Jim Henson's Creature Shop was notably founded by Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets. This would get fans excited. In October, Columbus's replacement as director would be announced to be Emma Tammy. It was noted though she hasn't directed many notable films. In December, it was announced that Matthew Lillard and Josh Hutcherson would be joining the cast. It was unknown who they would portray until one of Dawkins' live streams where it was revealed that Josh Hutcherson was the film's protagonist Mike Schmidt, and Matthew Lillard was William Afton, the film's antagonist. Mary Stuart Matterson and Piper Rubio would be also joining the cast, portraying Aunt Jane and Abby Schmidt respectively, also revealed in that Dawko livestream. In January of 2023, it was revealed in an interview that Lillard signed a 3-picture deal for the FNAF movie series.
But I just got cast in a movie called Five Nights at Freddy's.
Which congratulations.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's a 3-picture deal with Universal and Blumhouse.
On February 1st, filming eventually began in New Orleans under the name Bad Cupcake. Scenes outside of Freddy's were what the beginning days of filming were dedicated to, and then scenes at Freddy's would be filmed later on. Those scenes at Freddy's were actually filmed at an abandoned Home Depot in New Orleans that the production team built up a whole restaurant inside of. The first scene on the first day they ever filmed was the scene where Matthew Patrick, also known as MatPat, would cameo, the diner scene. A week before MatPat flew out to the set, MatPat would be practicing for the movie with Corey's role.
Oh, not cool, man!
It was revealed that the actors had their own trailers to stay in, and there would be a bunch of outfits, especially for Josh Hutcherson as Mike. MatPat would apparently put on 20 outfits, also dabbing with her chica. It turned out MatPat's one scene took 8 hours to film. They had to move cameras from outside and inside, they needed to have the specialty close-up cameras, they had to remove sides of the booths to capture each side of the booth for shots, remove the booth entirely to get close-up shots of MatPat, and so much more. There was even confirmed to be B-rolls of different tables getting served and dishes being served at the window. MatPat would point out a QR code on the wall which would be taken out from the scene and the movie for being anachronistic since the FNAF movie takes place in the early 2000s, and QR codes wouldn't be popular until around the 2010s. Scott Cawthon would end up showing up on set, and it would be the first ever time MatPat and Scott Cawthon met and talked in person, mostly sticking to conversations about the community and such, nothing about lore. Up until the movie's release, MatPat would intentionally throw off people from his cameo by making reactions to the trailers, as well as having Film Theory creative director Lee write a video predicting the film's plot, which MatPat would upload a normal Film Theory on Film Theory. Principal photography was apparently supposed to take place in March 2021, but was delayed until this point. In mid-February, Lillard started filming his scenes. The pizzeria sign that was going to be used for Freddy's was leaked as well, but we got an official and better look of it. The sign was created by Signworks LLC. There was small controversy with the sign because of Freddy having gloves, and also allegedly the design of Freddy was traced from Lady Fissy art of Freddy. Daka, Rezbowski, 8-Bit Ryan, and Baz would fly over to New Orleans to visit the film's set, invited by Scott and Blumhouse themselves. They got to see locations of the movie as well as the animatronics themselves. The production budget was around $25 million, and filming would wrap up on April 3rd. It was also revealed that the Newton brothers would be composing the film's score. On May 7th, the first trailer for the film was apparently leaked online. Scott wasn't too happy, but he was thankful for the fans that purposely didn't watch it or made coverage of it. This leaked trailer apparently lacked some SFX and other aspects that would make it an unfinished trailer. 10 days later, on the 17th of May, posters for the film were shown off publicly, and the teaser trailer would also be uploaded. There was some controversy with the red red eyes of the animatronics. The first proper trailer of the film would be uploaded June 27th. However, on July 13th was the SAG-AFTRA strike, which put a dent on the film's production, such as the cast not attending premieres, presses, social media campaigns, and more. It at least didn't affect the release of the film though, as the final trailer would be uploaded on August 30th. The next day it was confirmed that FNAF would be appearing at Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. On October 1st, a phone number associated with the film was posted for people to message for a supposed night guard position at Freddy's. It was to hype up the movie. A pop-up location of Freddy's even appeared in Los Angeles, California. Some early box office projections were revealed which seemed to put the FNAF movie in a good place for release. On the 16th, there was a Dave & Buster's partnership for the film that started taking place. However, on the same day, it was unfortunately revealed that Mark Fishbach, most famously known as Markiplier, was contacted to have a role in the film, but Mark ended up not going through with it due to scheduling conflicts with his film, Iron Lung. It was later revealed on after the movie's release in MatPat's FNAF Movie behind the scenes video that Markiplier was supposed to play the guard that got killed at the beginning of the movie.
It was supposed to happen. Let's get this straight. It was supposed to happen. There was, time that it was supposed to occur, and unfortunately, and I saw this coming a while away, but unfortunately, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie and my movie, Iron Lung, were being filmed at the exact same time. And this was not like anything other than it just so happened to be a conflict of schedule. Now, despite that, I was trying to make it work. I was trying to make it work because I was supposed to be out there for 2 days, and I was supposed to film with them, and I was supposed to be in the movie. But unfortunately, it was one of those things where I needed every second that I had to make my movie what it needed to be. And unfortunately, even though the timing was like maybe going to line up, it was one of those things where I had to make a call. Because I wouldn't expect them to compromise the quality of their project for me. And just in the same way, I wouldn't expect them to I would hope that they wouldn't expect me to compromise the project of my movie for them. So it was one of those situations where the schedule was there, but it just didn't line up. Like, there was so many things that I had to do, and flying out to go film for like a very short turnaround, come right back. It was just like, those were 2 days that I couldn't afford to lose. And it was 2 days, like, if there was no issues with, like, being away for that long and traveling. There could have been another day that was there, and it was like, I couldn't lose 2 days, let alone more, to be able to do any of that. So, unfortunately, I am not in the Five Nights at Freddy's movie.
2 days later, Scott Cawthon would upload a game to Game Jolt called FNAF the Movie the Game, and it turned out to be a troll, which was Freddy in Space 3, Chica in Space. When you beat the game, you got a URL link which led to a 9-minute video of the security cameras from the movie, and there was stuff hidden in the footage like Shadowed Freddy and an unwithered Foxy. The film would be released for theaters in the UK on the 25th, the film would be released on the streaming service Peacock on the 26th, and the film would be released for theaters in the US on the 27th. The film became Blumhouse's largest opening of all time, with $80 million domestically and $52.6 million worldwide, adding together for an opening weekend earning of $132.6 million. It even made the record of the third best opener for a horror movie of all time too, only being beaten by It and It Chapter 2. A sequel is confirmed to be in pre-production and is also confirmed to be based off of FNAF 2, but it will be a sequel instead of a prequel unlike the games. The script is also being reworked due to feedback and criticism from the movie. Scott would go on to Freddy to detail his experiences at various opening screenings for the FNAF movie. He also acknowledges the criticism for his film. A film novelization is planned for December 26th and a making of book for August 20th, 2024. So, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, my full review of the film. What did I think of the movie? After all of these years of waiting, was it worth the hype? Should I have been excited? Well, after seeing the movie in theaters, let me just say that, believe it or not, I loved it a lot. Now, it's not perfect or anything, not in the slightest. However, I do believe this is a genuinely solid film that does justice for Five Nights at Freddy's, and hell, not even just solid, a great film. Buckle up, buckaroos, this is gonna be a big one. To start off, I'm gonna say a positive that usually everyone universally likes or even loves about the film, and that's the animatronics, atmosphere, and location. Basically, the presentation. It all feels surreal in the best way possible. In the movie, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza feels like a fully realized location with so many areas to boot. It all weirdly feels real. It also feels abandoned too, which is a feeling it tries to pull in and it succeeds. Freddy's is long dead, abandoned after so many years ago, and the atmosphere of the place really sells on those feelings. It's haunting in a way, and it stays true to the rich, dark, and mysterious atmosphere that the first FNAF game is known and praised for. The atmosphere I loved is back, and seeing it on the big screen is even better. And there's animatronics. Oh my goodness, I was so excited to see these bastards on the big screen, and I was not disappointed. They're so lively, but creepy for a lot of this movie. They're haunted machines, and I love that a lot. Their movements are also sweet too, because it makes them intimidating. They look accurate to the games for the most part too. The designs are basically spot on. They nailed the animatronics in this, and I couldn't be any more happier with them. Another thing about this movie that's universally praised is the acting, and I agree. Everyone either did a pretty good job or did a great job. Matthew Lillard by far stole the show though. His take on Afton was refreshing from an old British man from the games and opted for a personality and tone that I think fits Afton more considering who Afton is in the games. He's literally a man in a spring Bonnie suit. Of course he's gonna be fucking goofy. It was enjoyable to see unfold. Even when he's Steve Raglan, he puts on a perfect disguise performance. It wasn't only Lillard though. Josh Hutcherson did a great job as Mike. He fits the protagonist role really well, and making Mike this somewhat chill guy with not a lot of excitement is fitting and surprisingly unique. It feels natural too. I like his performance a lot. Piper Rubio as Abby was also a highlight. Yeah, the child actor did great. Not a lot of people usually like the child actor. Rubio puts a certain innocence in Abby's character that is so believable when it comes to the performance. I adore it. Both when Abby's happy, like when she's hanging out with the animatronics, and when she's mad, like when Mike is giving her up to Aunt Jane. She acts like how a child should act, and it makes the movie more real and surprisingly grounded. It's not just these three that do a great job, everyone else did good too. It was just those three that sold me the most. Now, some people may disagree with me on this, but I don't care. This is a highlight of the movie for me and is one of the strongest aspects. That being said, I believe this movie has a near perfect balance between horror/thriller and lighthearted/comedy. What do I mean? Well, the movie has its dark moments that'll either creep you out or put you on the edge of your seat. Meanwhile, the movie can also be comedic in its own right, in a lighthearted way I may add. Some people complain about it switching between the two, but honestly, I like it because after being in suspense over the more thriller-esque scenes, you get a little break from it, whether for a brief moment or for a little while, so therefore, when they're back to putting you on your seat, it pumps you up or even catches you by surprise, shoving you into that delightful action. As well, on the topic of comedy, most of it is pretty funny. My favorite gag by far is the Balloon Boy figurine jump scares. That is top-tier comedy, I'm sorry. Scott and Blumhouse were definitely aware that Balloon Boy has a troll status among the FNAF community, so they're basically just trolling the audience. I adore it. I love how that's also the post-credit scene with the Balloon Boy figurine jump scaring taxi driver Corey. They could have gone with a post-credit scene that teased a sequel or provide some type of FNAF lore that is probably unnecessary, but no. The fact they went with this stupid running joke for the post-credits to be funny but also to be a troll to the audience. Fucking perfect. Part of me has a small theory that this may have been slightly a part of the Plushies Take Manhattan scrapped screenplay, going in line with some of the toys coming to life, although it's a figurine, not a plushie, so just fun to think about. The other comedy in this movie is pretty good too, whether that be Mike and Vanessa both saying to Afton, that's two things, after Afton explains two things when he's supposed to explain one, or just the pharmacy worker just calling Mike an asshole. I'm not a swear word equals funny person always, but that was hilarious, especially the way it was said. There's also the small scenes where Abby shows her child innocence and says something funny in a it's a kid saying it type of way. My favorite of those is when she tells Mike that Aunt Jane smells like cigarettes. My whole theater laughed at that. Also during the table fort scene, Bonnie falling over was hilarious. My whole theater laughed at that part too. Okay, so what would be my favorite aspect of the movie? I have favorite scenes that almost have nothing to do at all with my favorite aspect, but my favorite aspect of this film is the connection between Mike and Abby. I adore it so much. First off, I'm surprised it's brother and sister and not father and daughter, which I'm actually happy for because father and daughter is cliche, especially for a story or a movie like this, I'm sorry. However, Mike and Abby's relationship in this movie is to me the heart and soul of it. It's the main plot which makes it better. You can tell that Mike truly cares about Abby, a lot, especially what is best for her too. Hell, part of the reason Mike starts working at Freddy's in the first place is so he can provide for his sister. Of course, there's also the reason that him working somewhere would look good for his case in court against Aunt Jane, but I like to believe believe that part of the reason Mike works at Freddy's is for Abby. I feel like it's implied too anyway. Throughout the movie, we see Mike and Abby's relationship grow. Of course, Mike cares about Garrett and even goes to Abby to try and find things out, but at the same time, he cares about her well-being. This is gonna be a hot take, but I believe that the plot with Aunt Jane trying to take custody over Abby is actually useful and helpful towards the movie because it brings out this connection between Mike and Abby. Abby doesn't like Aunt Jane, she loves Mike. Dude, that scene where Abby comes in because Mike wanted to talk and Aunt Jane is there for you know what, and Abby being upset about it, that hit hard. And then afterwards where the animatronics, mostly Chica, try to kill Abby to make her one of them, and Mike does anything in his power to stop them and save Abby, gave me chills. It all comes full circle in the end where Abby's better in the eyes of her teacher or whoever, and Mike and Abby finally have some type of healthy connection with each other at the end. Even after Abby asks to visit Freddy in the game at the end, Mike doesn't say no. He makes it a possibility. The ending with Mike and Abby after they escape Freddy's is heartwarming in the most wholesome way possible. It's adorable. Another aspect about this movie I adore is just Mike in general. Mike has a great story in this movie. He's a great protagonist. In a normal horror movie, you expect the protagonist to always just be scared or being stupid for the sake of plot, but no. Mike is surprisingly a competent person who has reasons for any action he does, and he's not that much of a coward either. He actively goes to Freddy's when he feels like he needs to, whether that be because it's his job or because he has to save Abby at the end. He's not scared to go back, he just goes. A typical horror movie would just have him contemplate whether or not to go back, even probably for the ending to save Abby, but would go anyway for Abby. Nah, he ain't that scared, and I appreciate this movie for doing that. As well, the big thing I like about Mike in this movie is that he's massively built up on in comparison to his game counterpart. In the original FNAF game, he was a silent protagonist and he was just a name on a paycheck. That's it. In this, he actually has a connection to Freddy's, and that's everything with Garrett, his brother that got taken away by Afton. It gives us a reason to link Mike with this pizzeria besides being the security guard, and it makes us care about Mike as a character. In my opinion, where Mike's character truly shines a lot are the dream scenes, where he's recounting what happened to Garrett, as well as him interacting with the ghost children. It gives an internal look in the mind of Mike, and it makes him so much more compelling. The Garrett stuff in general already serves as a decent mystery, but I appreciate it more for what it does for Mike's character in the film overall. And of course, there's Afton. Now, I have my own critique with him, which I will share later, but I will say, when he shows up at the end, he's great. Again, Matthew Lillard does a great job as him, and this is the main thing I wanted to bring up with Afton. Him stabbing his daughter, Vanessa, like that as a form of betrayal was so brutal for Afton as a character that we truly haven't seen in the FNAF series up until this point, and I'm all here for it. It makes Afton threatening as an antagonist, and considering how much of a joke he became as FNAF went on, that was refreshing to see. I also like how cunning he is in a way that he controls the spirit so he can get Abby killed. It's so cool. Also, Doug's cool too, I guess. Something I'll also praise this movie for heavily is cutting back on the whole FNAF lore stuff. Listen, it's supposed to be a movie based off of the first game, so there being all of this lore like Remnant and reality-shifting bunny masks wasn't gonna fly, and as I'll get to later, general movie critics already hated this movie, and I think they would have hated it more if this stuff was in it. It makes me appreciate this movie much more as basically a standalone and simple thing. Now, it's time for me to discuss what my favorite scenes were. I've already talked about what my favorite aspects were, but my favorite just scenes for me. It's a tie between two moments of the movie. The first being the intro of the film where the previous security guard gets caught by Foxy and gets fucking massacred and dies with the machine they use to stuff people into suits. It's fast paced that it puts you on your seat, the excitement of Foxy appearing, the build up to Foxy 2 in the Shadow Flash, and the brutality of what happens to the guard after Foxy gets him. It excites you for the movie and shows what you'll be in for when it comes to the animatronics. And the other scene that ties for me for best scene of the movie is the part in the middle where it's the break-in with the juvenile delinquents that Aunt Jane hired to vandalize Freddy's to help further ruin Mike's job, and the main four animatronics kill each of them, each animatronic getting a kill. It's weirdly satisfying and it gives the animatronics some screen time and we see them in action. It's exciting. I remember everyone in my theater were having surprise reactions over the animatronics getting kills. Chica's may have been a little goofy, but I love how the cupcake was utilized. And that's another thing I noticed with this movie. The cupcake does a lot in this film. He did nothing in the original game, and now he's doing much more than before, and it's so enticing. Bonnie's kill was probably my favorite, mostly because we actually see blood from the windowed door. Bonnie's a fucking menace, I love it. Foxy was cool too as he literally ran up to the dude, and Freddy's kill was probably my second favorite because the bitch literally got cut in half. That is something. We don't usually see this murder stuff in FNAF, especially from the FNAF animatronics, ignoring the typical game jump scares, so it's surprising as hell. I'm torn between which scene from the movie is my favorite because both of these go hard for their own reasons. In terms of other scenes worth talking about, I thought the 8-bit title scene was a quaint and nice callback to the 8-bit minigames from FNAF. It all looks good too. I also really like how it subtly showcases the 5 murdered children incident. It keeps that mystery aspect from the games and I adore it. Now, I'm gonna discuss my opinions on 2 scenes that are very divisive among people who've seen the movie, even fans. Those being the table fort scene and the spring lock scene. I'll start with the fort scene. The fort scene is divisive because on one hand, there's people that believe it was too silly and out of place for FNAF, and on the other hand, there are people that believe it's cute and wholesome, mostly because of the friendly relationship between Abby and the animatronics. Where do I stand? I'm in the middle, and basically agree with both sides. I do believe this scene was a little strange and questionable, especially for this series, which does have silly moments, and this movie has successful lighthearted like I've already talked about, but I don't know, man. The animatronics helping out with the table fort and everything is very security breach to me and is sort of out of place for FNAF 1. However, I do agree that it helps with the story and it is kind of sweet because of that relationship between Abby and the animatronics as well as Mike and Vanessa. It's a quick light chapter before more thriller/horror scenes go down and it's a nice break. It's actually kind of wholesome, so that's why I don't even dislike this scene. I'm just mixed on it. Together we are FNAF! And the other scene being the ever so hyped up spring lock scene. This one is divisive because on one hand, people didn't like the lack of gore and bloodshed that they would have expected from a scene as brutal in concept as this. However, on the other hand, people still saw it as satisfying, even more so since Afton was still in pain and it's still portrayed through his acting. Where do I stand on this scene? Well, unlike the fort scene where I was mixed, I'm actually on a side for this divisive scene, and I'm on the latter side that believes that the scene is still good because of Willard's great acting like he's in pain. It gets the job done pretty well still. The animatronics are even menacing during it with their angry looks. I love it. I also love how the pizzeria starts falling apart afterwards and our protagonists basically escape. That was also intense too. Now, I'm going to discuss an aspect of the film that everyone talks about because of how fun it is and was a fun thing for me to discover too when watching. And that's all the fan service in the film. All the Easter eggs, references, and secrets to the games, the books, and even community stuff like YouTubers and music and hoaxes. The first ones I'll start off with are the YouTuber cameos. MatPat's was the best cameo in my opinion, for 2 reasons. First off, his performance is actually solid and doesn't feel like pandering. Even his line of, "but that's just a theory," is so clearly a reference, but it fits well in the movie naturally that it's not an issue. Real quickly, I kind of figured MatPat would be in the movie, but I didn't expect this to be his role, a coffee shop/diner waiter. I thought he'd be like a paranormal conspiracy theorist or something like about the murdered children incident, which goes in line with his actual career, but this works too. Again, it's natural. And secondly, there's fun extra references with his cameo. First off, the name of the place he works at is a reference, which I'll get to in a bit, and his name tag being Ness was so hilarious. If you don't know, it's a reference to MatPat's very controversial Sans Ness theory that everyone universally memes on and dislikes. However, it's to the point where MatPat even jokes about it, and even Scott Cawthon himself, because as confirmed by MatPat in his video talking about the movie, that was actually Scott's intention to base it off of Sans Ness theory. And if you really think about it, this basically means that there was technically both an Earthbound and loosely an Undertale reference in the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I love you, Scott. Anyway, the next notable YouTuber cameo was Corey X Kenshin as the taxi driver. He also does a good performance. I love how he's basically just so desensitized to everything because of how many quote-unquote weirdos he gets that he doesn't even question Golden Freddy in the back of the taxi after initially jumping to him. Same with the Balloon Boy figurine in the post-credits. His acting was also great. The only other YouTuber cameos in this movie is the Employee of the Month wall, which has Dalko, Razbowski, 8-Bit Ryan, Bizamalan, Fusion Gamer, and DJ Sturf. Those were pretty good too and fit well in universe. The other references I noticed were Chica's Magic Rainbow from FNAF World being all over the ice cream place at the mall center, one of the juvenile delinquents wearing a shirt with Midnight Motors from Pizzeria Simulator on it, the name of the diner MatPat works at being a reference to the Sparky the Dog hoax from back in the early days of FNAF, who is referenced yet again in the movie as one of the spare suits in the back, same with Shadow Freddy. The scene where Abby's trying to get away from Foxy and they're both in the arcade is a reference to the beginning of the Silverized novel, which was probably left over from the Silverized screenplay. As well, for another FNAF novel trilogy reference, Ella makes an appearance as a suit. It's the suit that Chica tries to kill and stuff Abby in. All of these are so cool, especially for fans, and you just can't help but love it. They're not even pandering either, it's all natural too. That just makes it better and more fun. And there's one more piece of fan service I saved for last, because it's my favorite piece of fan service presented in the movie, and you all know what it is. The Living Tombstone's original FNAF song is the credit song. Absolute perfection. I know I originally was against flat out copying the same exact song without making it more cinematic, as I discussed in my FNAF movie fan service from earlier this year, but not anymore, opinions change. It fits this type of movie, and it was a nice surprise. Also, I adore how the credits has has some kid drawings of the animatronics like Freddy's does. Perfect. Speaking of the song of the credits, the music and soundtrack of this film was so well done. Besides The Living Tombstone, I think my favorite track from the movie was the other music from the credits, which is a rendition of the Puppets music box. I think I prefer it over the original too. People say it's sequel teasing, which could be true, but regardless, it's a nice piece. I'm also a fan of the music that plays during the title scene, also solid. And those were my biggest positives with the movie overall. Now this movie, while being great in my opinion, is not perfect and does have a few issues. Here are my criticisms. My first of those criticisms being that I think 3 certain characters were underused, those being Afton, Freddy, and Golden Freddy. We'll start with Afton. Now to be fair, Afton's is not as bad because he did get a startup as his Steve Raglan disguise, as well as his brutal side he portrayed in the ending of the movie, but I wish he was built up more. I wish he had more appearances as Steve Raglan so the audience could keep guessing on if he's William Afton or not. Honestly, the twist Afton was Raglan didn't really seem that natural. Sure, it's a twist, so it had to be a surprise somewhat, but I wish it could have been hinted at more. The closest thing we get is Afton at the beginning recognizing Mike from his last name because of Garrett obviously, so he cuts off halfway reading his last name. I don't know. The next character with this issue for me is Freddy himself, which has basically become a trend in the franchise. Freddy just seems to be sidelined a lot in the series, even though he's the title character. Even this movie. Basically Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and even the Cupcake do more than Freddy in the movie. They get the moments more. Now Freddy's scene where he kills the girl by biting her in half was really good, and his spirit gets screen time in the Mike dream scenes, but that's really it. Freddy himself doesn't do much, I'm surprised. And then lastly, the third character who's underused, and I would say was heavily underused, was Golden Freddy. You'd think Golden Freddy would have somewhat of a bigger role because of his mysterious side to him from FNAF 1, but no. He's only there for a few minutes ignoring his spirit. He kills Aunt Jane and he rides with Abby in the taxi before disappearing for the rest of the film when they get to Freddy's. I just wish Golden Freddy did more, had more importance to the plot. That's all. The only true purpose he had was ending the whole Aunt Jane stuff by yet again killing her, so yeah. Imagine how cool it would have been if there was like a plot twist that Golden Freddy was Garrett, you know? That would have been so awesome. The next thing I didn't really like about the movie was I didn't really care for Vanessa all that much. She's just there when she needs to be, and the twist that she's Afton's daughter, while surprising, didn't really make sense to me. I don't know why, I guess because it just doesn't feel right, you know? I feel like she just serves as exposition when I feel like they could have just done that as well as trying to make her a more compelling character. Do more with her being Afton's daughter, that would have been nice. Since I don't care for her, the scene where Mike visits her in the hospital didn't really resonate with me. Yeah, I will say though, it is as clear as day that Vanessa was partly only included in the film because they needed to have some type of fan service for security breach in the movie, so therefore, the newer fans that like that type of FNAF more than the more horror type of FNAF that FNAF 1 is would be appeased. I especially believe this since literally the final screenplay and scripts for the movie were in production at the same time security breach was in production. With that though, I think it was done tastefully and didn't seem pandering at all. Vanessa's role fits and was probably one of the better ways they could have gone with security breach fan service. My next huge critique is the lack of true horror, and that's something a lot of people, even people who like the movie, can agree with. It's not that scary, and I think it's because it tried more to be a thriller than a horror movie, which, you know what, I'm actually fine with. It definitely would have been more interesting if horror was a huge key aspect of the movie because it could have shown more sides to the FNAF series, since already, the FNAF games aren't the scariest media out there. Most of the horror the games have are jump scares, the atmospheres of some games like FNAF 1 and 4, and I would say suspenseful gameplay like FNAF 4 again, but the latter is more of a thriller aspect than a horror aspect. And yeah, I'm not huge on the jump scares in the movie. There was only one time I jumped when watching the movie, and that was the one Mike dream scene where the Foxy kid jump scares Mike and he has like the possessed eyes from the games. That got me good. But the rest of the jump scares were kind of predictable in all honesty, and I don't even count the Balloon Boy figurine jump scares either. That's more comical. Yeah, I'm more happy calling this movie a thriller than a horror, which like I said, I'm fine with in the end. Now we're on to the nitpicks. Things that are minor issues in comparison to the movie that I don't really care about in reality, but still. There's 2 for me. The first being when Afton says his catchphrase, "I always come back." Now, it was exciting and fun to hear him say that since it's literally iconic, but I feel like it was a little forced and it could have been done better. I feel like if it was the last line of the movie during the final scene before the credits where Afton was reaching his hand out at the spirit and everything, that would have gone hard and been more exciting, and it would have been a final sting to conclude the movie besides The Living Tombstone. And my last nitpick for the movie is, well, where the hell is Phone Guy? Okay, I get it. He was probably replaced by the training video that Mike watches on night 1, and the movie already had enough exposition, but I feel like it would have been really cool and true to FNAF if Phone Guy, even for like a few lines, or maybe for just night 1, was in the movie. I also felt like it would have made for a perfect Scott Cawthon cameo. Scott has been confirmed by multiple people to be on the set of the movie and presumably has been there multiple times, so I think a missed out opportunity took place. It ultimately doesn't bother me though, same with the "I always come back" line, as that was still exciting to hear regardless. Before I wrap up my thoughts on the movie, I'm gonna talk about other things real quick. Firstly, I'm gonna do something controversial. I am going to defend the film's PG-13 rating. Yes, if it was rated R like a lot of people wanted, it could have made way for more gore and even horror that would have brought new layers to the FNAF franchise. However, PG-13 still works, and that's because FNAF already was a teen-rated series from the very beginning. It stays true to the series in that way, so I can't really fault the movie for that. Next is the fan versus non-fan division this film has spawned. I will talk about the critic reviews in the conclusion of this video later, especially Rotten Tomatoes, so I'll be brief here. But it was clear that a lot of non-fans were either just not going to get it or like it. This movie was created primarily for the FNAF fans. It was made for a certain audience, so that's why there's such a division, especially with people outside the target age group of the movie, which I'll get to later with the critics. Finally, I just want to share which parts of the movie that everyone in my movie theater at the screening I went to reacted to or blew up to the most. This is gonna be me being a FNAF fanboy, then a FNAF critic for a second, so just hold on and bear with me. I'm not gonna include laughs because I already kinda did. The Aunt Jane smelling like cigarettes joke with Abby and Bonnie falling over during the fort scene were the biggest two that everyone around, and myself included, laughed at the most. Basically, I'm going to be referring to the parts where everyone around me gasped or were surprised or excited. There were 5 parts in particular everyone at my theater had a reaction to, and I will add, I was a part of the reaction, except for one scene. I gasped and was excited along with these people. So the first part was MatPat's cameo. Most people in my theater got excited when MatPat showed up on screen, and especially got more excited when he said his "but that's just a theory" line. Surprisingly, people in my theater didn't react much to Corey's cameo. A few did, but damn. The second part my theater reacted huge to was the reveal that William Afton was Vanessa's father. Everyone was gasping or screaming. I yelled, "What?" and someone even yelled, "Bruh." The third part people in my theater reacted heavily to was when it was revealed that William Afton and Steve Raglan were the same person. Now, this was the only part my theater reacted to where I didn't have a true reaction, and that's because, like a decent portion of you watching probably, I already knew this. If you know who Matthew Lillard is, you already knew. And also, if you've been up to date with the production of this movie before it came out, you would have especially known this too. I was in both crowds. The one that knew who Lillard was because of Scream and Scooby-Doo, and the one that kept progress in the production of the FNAF movie. The fourth part people in my theater reacted to was when Afton said, "I always come back." And I will admit, even though I still stand by the fact it was a little forced, I did clap. Come on, it was still exciting he said that, and everyone in my theater blew up when he said that. And the fifth and final part that everyone in my theater reacted heavily and blew up to was when the Living Tombstone played in the credits. Everyone knew the song, and everyone clapped and cheered, and some of my friends that I was with started singing the song, of course. However, this all just goes to show that watching this movie in a theater with other FNAF fans was such a happy and surreal experience all the same. Hell, literally one of the people there in my theater had a Freddy beanie. He was like 2 rows in front of me. Some people, even myself, wore FNAF shirts, and one of the cleaning workers at the theater actually had a puppet cosplay, which was actually really good. Some teenage girl who came out of the previous screening before mine even came out with toy Bonnie ears. And this next one is not even a FNAF thing, but so, if you watch my channel, and especially my Tyler Tales series, you may know Panzer Boy, or Mutant Eagle 971, who is the voice actor of Mutant from the series. He was one of the friends I was with at the theater watching the FNAF movie, and I kid you not, he dressed up in a damn suit and everything for the Funny Bear Game movie. If you're watching, dude, why? I loved it, but bro. Anyways, fun rambling aside, this was my review of the movie. There's still the conclusion section, obviously, but while not a perfect film, I had a lot of fun with it, and I heavily enjoyed it. I consider this a good movie, and I loved it a lot. I give the Five Nights at Freddy's movie a 9 out of 10. Cheers to Scott Cawthon, Blumhouse, Emma Tammy, the actors, and everyone involved. Did the Five Nights at Freddy's movie suck? In my opinion, no, it didn't. If anything, it was actually great. I just go as far as to say that I loved it. Sure, it isn't a perfect movie and has some flaws, but if I have to be honest, this was an enjoyable experience. Sure, a lot of the critics would say otherwise, criticizing many aspects, especially the plot and writing, and while a lot of them do have very fair points, Don't always trust critics, guys. Look, I don't know how much of a controversial take this is going to be, but never let movie criticism dictate your experience and enjoyment of a film, especially when it comes to quote-unquote professional movie critics. It honestly wasn't a surprise that the Rotten Tomatoes score on the critics side for this movie was in the 20s to 30s in the percentages. FNAF as a franchise and its movie are targeted for a teen and younger adult audience. The movie is even PG-13, so it's no surprise that critics who are in their mid-40s had a more negative reaction to the movie. I hate to burst some of y'all's bubbles or validate them, I don't know, but websites like Rotten Tomatoes shouldn't always be seen as credible on critics' side a lot of the time, because 70% of the time, critic reviews for these types of movies are only written for job purposes and not because they actually care about the film or the genre or just anything. They either want to check or they want to stir the pot. Sometimes they may care about the movie or genre or what have you, but it's to the point where they expect a complete masterclass of cinema when that's not what the movie is trying to be like, at all. Five Nights at Freddy's was not going to be peak cinema, and it wasn't trying to be. Due to this, just don't bother with the critic scores with this movie. And by the way, this is the same website that critics rated Cuties in the high 80s of percentages, which is for some reason higher than the FNAF movie, so yeah. It wasn't surprising either that the audience scores were a high percentage, because that's what the target audience usually is most of the time. A lot of fans and some general moviegoers seemed to enjoy it. Some didn't as much, of course, but hey, that's common with every movie, especially a movie for a certain audience. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie, while flawed in certain aspects, was a fantastic film, in my opinion. From the fan aspect to even movie aspects. It was enjoyable for me from start to finish, and I can't believe I'm saying this either because, well, it's Five Nights at Freddy's in 2023. Let me explain. For a long time, Five Nights at Freddy's as a franchise has been in a decline in quality. Sure, it's gotten more popular because of meme culture and everything, but after Help Wanted, FNAF took a turn for the worse. Okay, I personally love Help Wanted, it's my favorite FNAF game, and while lore-wise things were wrong, it was still an enjoyable experience for me, so unlike a lot of people, I don't consider Help Wanted the start of the decline. After that though, oh boy. FNAF AR Special Delivery is the worst game of the whole series in my opinion. It's a greedy ass experience that sucks your wallet somehow despite being free, is a complete time waster, and it does things that are questionable and has skins that are made for merchandise only and are meant to appeal to fucking children, not even to be horror. Then we have Security Breach, which was straight up a failure for its bugs, boring gameplay, lack of horror, and the lazy and pandering lore with Burn Trap. The Ruin DLC further made things worse because of the whole immersion-breaking mask, repetitive gameplay, and stupid ending and lore. After the release of Ruin, I thought FNAF was done. I even thought this movie would be ass. Five Nights at Freddy's was losing its identity. This series I once really loved was starting to become a series I kinda started resenting. Despite my love for the older games and even fan games, songs, and other content still being present, all hope seemed lost. That was, until I saw this movie. I couldn't have asked for a better movie. Yeah, it has some issues, but honestly, everything this movie did right made me once again love and appreciate the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. The love I once felt for it has returned. I fully love Five Nights at Freddy's again. After so long. Sure, Special Delivery and Security Breach as well as the controversies that have happened with this series in recent years all happened, but they don't matter to me anymore. I'm excited for the direction FNAF is taking now. I'm excited for Help Wanted too. Knowing FNAF can bring joy out of me again makes me hopeful. Five Nights at Freddy's is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I grew up with it, and I still love it. It's a franchise I hold near and dear to me, and I'm happy this movie exists after so long. Long live Five Nights at Freddy's. At the end of the day, after all, I'm proud and honored to be a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, and I will be for a long, long, long time.